Good afternoon, everybody, and Shavua Tov. Welcome to the Israel Brief, brought to you by Lay of the Land. I'm Raleen Marks, your host, and as always, I bring you those top stories from Israel and surrounds every Monday to Thursday, and it has been quite a harrowing 48 hours. So I'm going to get right into it. And at the moment, the leaders of the southern regions of Israel are debating how to respond to a rocket that was fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel near the towns of Sderot earlier today. The Iron Dome intercepted the incoming projectile, but this is the first time a rocket has been fired since the conflagration between Hamas and Israel in May earlier this year. This was known as Operation Guardians of the Wall and saw 11 days of heavy fighting between the two sides, and this breaks the ceasefire. We will see in the coming hours how Israel will respond. And the question we are all asking, is this in a response to the events unfolding in Afghanistan? Now, it has been an absolutely tragic 48 hours as the world has watched with horror as the Taliban have taken city after city, eventually capturing the capital, Kabul, yesterday. The Afghani government have surrendered. The former president has fled the country, and right now we have an interim Taliban government that has declared the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. This is an entity that believes in Sharia law. The situation for the some 30 million Afghanis is very, very unclear and remains quite tragic, especially for women and girls. The record that the Taliban has with the treatment of young girls and women is an absolute human rights catastrophe. In the meantime, Hamas leaders have praised what they see as the Taliban victory over the West and have congratulated the Taliban government. Now, of course, a lot will be written and a lot will be debated in the coming days and months as we take stock of what has happened. A lot of criticism for the Biden administration for retreating the way that they did from Afghanistan very, very quickly in scenes reminiscent of the Vietnam War, the evacuation of Saigon. This post is not going to get into that. For the moment, we are just going to report on the events as they unfold, and of course take a moment to acknowledge the human rights catastrophe it leaves on the ground. We have been horrified today as the scenes of Afghanis running to the airport, trying to cling to leaving aeroplanes, the absolutely shocking images of Afghanis falling from the skies as the aeroplanes pull up their landing gear. It's scenes that to me are reminiscent of 9/11, when people had no choice but to jump out of the burning buildings. Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers are with the people of Afghanistan, and especially the many people that worked along with allied troops to work as translators and who literally formed a buffer between Taliban forces and allied troops. Our thoughts, our prayers, and our acknowledgement is also for the thousands of troops killed and injured trying to bring democracy into Afghanistan. As I said, now this is not the post, this is not the brief to debate the merits or demerits of this, but really just to bring you the events as they have happened over the last 48 hours and to acknowledge the high human cost on the ground. In other news, we brought you last week news that the lower parliament of Poland had voted into law the legislation that brings an end to Holocaust restitution and property for those who survived or perished during the Holocaust, as well as those who lost their homes and their property during communist rule. On Saturday, Poland's President Duda signed this into legislation, and what has transpired over the last 48 hours has also deepened the ongoing and growing rift between Israel and the Polish government. No sooner had this been signed in, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yair Lapid, told the Polish ambassador to stay on his vacation in Poland, not to return to Israel. And we have recalled our chargé d'affaires from the capital Warsaw for indefinite consultations. The Polish government responded yesterday saying the acts by Israel will only severely harm bilateral ties between the two countries, and both Yair Lapid and our Prime Minister Naftali Bennett have weighed in on it. Yair Lapid called this anti-democratic, and he said that the days of the Jewish voice being silent in Poland are over, and the Prime Minister alluded to the absolute contempt that this act shows for the memory of the Holocaust and for those who perished in Poland. This is an ongoing diplomatic rift, and we will be bringing you updates. And our final story, we bring you updates about the fires in and around Jerusalem yesterday, the clouds of smoke that billowed over the capital as a result of fires on the outskirts. Now, officials have said a short while ago that the fires are largely under control. At the moment, one person remains missing, somebody evacuated from a psychiatric facility, as thousands of people were evacuated to safety yesterday, including what was quite heartwarming under the circumstances to see the Israeli police evacuating stray dogs and stray animals in the area. It is believed that the fires were man-made, whether intentional or not, and of course exacerbated by the very dry, very hot conditions in Israel at the moment. And our final story takes us to Haiti. Haiti, the Caribbean island nation, suffered another tremendously awful earthquake over the weekend. At least 1,000 people have been killed, and Israel has dispatched an emergency aid team to assist on site. This is the second time that Israel will be assisting on the ground in just a matter of years after a natural disaster in Haiti. Those are our top stories making headlines. We will continue to follow events in Afghanistan and in Poland as they unfold. In the meantime, please check out our website for our original content. We have articles going up, one by Dave Kaplan about Afghanistan, which will be posted later today. If you are viewing this on Facebook and you like our content, please share our content. More often than not, we are faced with the Facebook clampdown or censor on this type of content, and this goes a long way to helping us get Israel's side of the story out to the masses that you won't see in the mainstream media. So if you're watching this, please consider sharing, and while you are doing it, please like or follow our Facebook page and invite your friends to do the same. We are also on YouTube. Our channel is at the Israel Brief, and we would love it if you clicked on that red subscribe button. We are on Twitter as well at Lay of the Land 5. That's at Lay of the Land 5. So with today's edition of the Israel Brief, I wish it could have been a more positive broadcast. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief brought to you by Lay of the Land, and we will speak again tomorrow.